Welcome to Veterans Archives, where your story matters. We are dedicated to preserving the stories of our nation's heroes for future generations. Welcome to part 3 of our 5-part series with Don Roach, who served in the United States Marine Corps.
And the funny thing about those little boats, one night we heard their motors start up, which was unusual. Usually they didn't do anything except in daylight.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of them. We could hear them coming, and I was on the hillside of the river. So even though there was no light to see it, the sound carried over the water, and I, being on top of the hill, could hear it really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew somebody friendly was down there. And we had no radio calls. There were no signal lights or flares or anything else. So technically, we were being assaulted.
Okay.
I mean, our job was to defend the hill.
Yeah.
And if it had been somebody friendly, they should have said something. Well, about that time, we were given permission to fire our weapons to make sure to clear them for the night. And about 2 clicks away from the hill was an obelisk the French had left. It was like a little tiny Washington monument.
Mm-hmm.
And these were milestone markers. You'd see them around Vietnam. And we couldn't read French. We didn't know what they said. They had numbers on them, but they didn't mean anything to us.
Right.
But they made damn good rifle targets at night because you could see them in the moonlight.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet.
So I'm laying down automatic, slow fire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, firing at this target 2 clicks away. I'm shooting tracers. My buddies are betting how many times I'm going to hit this stupid thing. You know.
Yeah.
So I fire off 10 rounds, hit 10 hits. I'm done for the night. I don't need to shoot anymore. And there were other guys that borrowed some tracers, and they didn't do as well. They came close.
Mm-hmm.
I gave them credit. They didn't come close.
Well, that's a long shot.
Well, all we had is a peep sight, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next morning, my platoon commander, which was a staff sergeant,
Mm-hmm.
comes to us. And he wants to know who was shooting tracers last night. And the lieutenant's with him.
Uh-huh.
Lieutenant has now been promoted to executive officer.
Okay.
Lieutenant Stewart. I thought, just get him out of the field. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
I don't want him around anything explosive.
He's going to get somebody hurt.
And so I raised my hand. I mean, it was an honest question, who was shooting tracers? They ignored me. I swear I'm invisible. I could sit in a room with maybe 5 other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you ask those people who was in the room with you, and they'll say 5 people. There were 5 of us all together. They'll
Right.
miss me completely.
That's why you were so good at procurement.
Yeah, I'm invisible.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to realize that, but I'm invisible. And, or at least they don't remember my name.
Right. Which is not always a bad thing.
And in the service, nobody wants to admit what they don't know.
Right.
Whatever it is, if they don't admit to it, they don't know it. It didn't happen. They never saw it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was. So I'd be left alone. Anyway, these 2 guys are questioning us about the tracer fire. Well, it turns out that the captain and the gunnery sergeant decided to inspect the lines from outside the lines, which usually results in 2 dead people.
Right. Friendly fire, for sure.
You don't inspect the lines from outside the lines. Who
No.
came up with that crazy scheme? Well, the captain came up with it, and the gunnery sergeant went with him. Well, the gunnery sergeant would drink a bottle of Jack a day,
Mm-hmm.
so by 6 o'clock he was pretty much done. He didn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
And yet he would do whatever a captain told him to do. Drive a Jeep, whatever it was.
Inspect the lines from outside the lines.
So the tracer rounds were hitting this obelisk and ricocheting right back to the beach. And I had them pinned down in the sand. And they were afraid to move for about a half an hour.
They're lucky they didn't get shot.
So they got back in their boats and went back across the river.
Uh-huh.
And now they're mad. Like, we have a right to be mad. I'm a captain and he's a gunnery sergeant. What the hell's wrong with you people? Well, it's not like we could see them.
Right?
And they sure didn't bother to advise us of anything. I would have called that a justified kill.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you didn't even know they were out there. What were you supposed to do?
And even though I was shooting ricochet shots, I'm surprised I missed them.
You are a good shot.
Law of averages are, I'm going to hit something.
Yeah. Yeah, because you fired a lot of rounds downrange at that point.
Those bullets are going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, we survived that. Nothing came of it. And my last night on that hill, I was on watch about 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's very still, eerily still. There's no sound, no rat. Usually we'd hear rats chirping or something, but there was nothing. And I just happened to look upriver, and holy cow, there's a big ball of orange flame coming right at us. And it's not whooshing by, it's just moving slowly, like it's floating in the mist. And the air was very moist, so objects had that lit up and had a glow around them.
Mm-hmm.
So this ball of fire just glowed away, went between the two spans of the bridge, and disappeared downriver. That's when I decided to yell, "Incoming!" Well, that caught everybody's attention. Everybody's getting up. Everybody's grabbing, figuring out where their weapon is, grabbing it. So we're at 100% alert. The whole base is awake. Nothing happens. So squad leader finally stumbles his way over to me. And he knows I'm the one that yelled incoming. He knows my voice.
Yeah.
He says, "What's going on?" I said, "Big ball of fire came right down the river. Never saw anything like it. Don't know what it was." But it was not, I had the feeling it was evil.
It certainly got your attention.
So he tells me, shit, go back to sleep. You're imagining things. You're asleep on doozy. Don't make me report you and all this stuff. Everybody goes back to sleep. I'm wide awake. 2 hours later, another one floats down the river, sails between the bridge, and disappears. I don't say a word.
Right.
What am I going to do?
You don't get yelled at again, right?
I mean, I can't get them up fast enough to see it, so I just watch it disappear. So the next morning, we're relieved of duty. We go back to the other side of the river, which is where the mess hall is. So we have breakfast. Well, it passed for breakfast. We're back in our huts, cleaning our gear. And platoon sergeant walks in. You wouldn't believe this, but this morning, the Army down river found 2 12-foot long Chinese rockets that buried in a sandbar. They were duds. They didn't go off.
Oh my gosh.
So these were 12-foot rockets firing at the bridge. Of course, the dummies weren't smart enough to shoot at the borders of the river. They were shooting in the middle of the river, and the bridge wasn't finished.
Right.
So they just passed right through. And did I tell you about the satchel charge?
No.
On the low side of the river, the Seabees had dug a trench around one half of the base, and that was the side that was facing the bad guy territory. and they built pillboxes for us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you were safe if you were in the pillbox, but if you were in that trench at one end and something went off in the other, you'd get hit by shrapnel.
Yeah.
So the last place you wanted to be when there was incoming was in that trench. You were better off being topside or in a bunker.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on fire watch duty. I've got to patrol the bunkers on my portion of the line, make sure everybody's awake. And there's a guy coming from the other end who's doing the same thing on his end. So we'd meet in the middle, greet each other, and then we'd go back, and again, we'd check every bunker on the way back. There had to be at least one man on 100% alert,
Yeah.
wide awake. And of course, we had to be wide awake to do this. So this counted as our watch, because we were walking around checking things. So the other guy was a machine gunner named Johnny Bibbs. He was from Virginia, had the biggest beer belly I ever saw in the Marine Corps. Could move like lightning when he had to.
Uh-huh.
And he could carry a machine gun or a tripod. You know, he was a tough little guy. And he was also the #1 moonshine maker in the company.
Oh.
If you wanted a drink and you couldn't buy anything anywhere, you went to Johnny and he had a supply. He always had a supply. I don't know what he used.
Maybe you didn't even want it.
I don't even know when he did it.
Right.
But machine gunners were kind of like separate. They were a separate platoon. They kept to themselves. And he was a character.
Uh-huh.
He was one of those guys that actually run moonshine in an old jalopy before he went in the Marine Corps. So he was pretty sure after several generations of his family doing it, he could do it just as well. And I do remember him tasting something one day, and he said, "Nah, doesn't quite have it." And he grabbed a can of lighter fluid and sprayed it in there. I said, "Keep away from me."
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where you don't want to know how that was made.
I don't even want to breathe that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but enough people thought he was doing a good job that they enjoyed it. I didn't drink anything back then. Anyway, Johnny and I were doing this walk, and we got to the middle of this position, and I heard an explosion off base.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a sound in the air, a new sound. Whoop, 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 whoop. Well, that to me meant something was flying through the air. I looked at Johnny, and he looked at me, and I yelled as loud as I could, "Incoming!" And we both hit the deck. And we were leaning up against the sand wall, you know.
Uh-huh.
Well, there was a mound of sand above us. Something hit that mound, and the sand trickled down on us. I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I said, "Run!" And we both went the opposite directions for the nearest bunker.
Uh-huh.
Get, like I said, get out of that trench, get in a bunker. Well, when I yelled "incoming," that woke everybody up. And the immediate action was to fire a flare. So 10 different positions, all fired pop flares.
Yeah.
Take the cap off, and I never shot one in my life. Off they go. Rocketry.
Yeah.
Marines with explosive toys.
Probably not a good idea.
They were dying to fire these flares.
Oh, I'll bet.
We carried them all day. We had them next to us all night. Now we had an excuse, so they fired the flares. So 10 flares are in the air immediately. There's nothing going on. Can't see anybody. And of course, one guy's hand slips when he fires, and the flare goes sideways, and the guys at that end of the trench fire one back, and you know, it's the pop flare war of 1968 all over again.
You're right.
And needless to say, a lot of flares went up in the air. Green, red, white, any color, didn't matter. They all went up. So the next morning, Staff Sergeant McCall, our platoon commander, comes, and Staff Sergeant McCall, let me tell you about him. His name was Anthony McCall.
Mm-hmm.
He was KIA over there. He was the finest field Marine I ever met. The man reeked of command, authority, and ability. I never questioned anything he said or thought.
Mm-hmm.
I learned from it. And there were times he learned something from me, too. My squad leaders gave him my reputation. Like, I always know where I am day or night. You ever need to know where you are, ask him where he is, and you'll know where you are. He's a rifle expert. He says he was an expert with the M14. He got even better with the M16. So don't get in front of his rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Don't piss him off. And he's a good team leader. You know, he explains things to his men. He gets them moving, and basically people would follow him anywhere. Except me.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any problem with being in authority. I liked it to the point I didn't want to do it full time.
Yeah.
But as long as I was doing my job, it was okay to have some help that I could rely on.
Yeah.
And there were only certain times I didn't want help. And that was usually late at night when things were spooky.
Mm-hmm.
And when things got bad and scary, that's when they called me. And I went out and took care of the problem.
Yeah.
And I came back. At least I came back every time, so that was...
Right, you're here now, so...
Something good.
Yeah.
And anyway, after the sergeant was there to tell us that the command, meaning all us Marines, had fired off every pop flare on the base. 250 pop flares. We had fired, that was a supply for the whole company.
Yeah.
They had fired every single flare, which means somebody went back to supply and got the last ones and fired them off too. I don't know who did that, but somebody did. And so now we're a rifle company combat base with no flares, which means we can't signal attacking aircraft, we can't signal for help. I mean, there were different colors for different uses, and we didn't have them. So they had to run a special truck to, I think, the regiment,
mm-hmm.
to get some flares for a hotel company. And of course, we were ordered not to fire any more flares. Only NCOs could order a flare to be fired.
There you go, yep.
It's like, you idiots are irresponsible. And the sergeant was basically there because after talking to 50 people, he figured out I was the one that yelled incoming. So he was there to teach me a lesson. So he went looking for me. Well, that morning, my platoon was on sandbag duty. They were filling sandbags.
Mm-hmm.
He came out, found me sitting on top of this big hill of sand, right next to the ditch. That's what we called that trench.
Yeah.
And I'm up there cross-legged with a stick probing the sand. So he comes down, he comes over, sits down cross-legged, and real friendly starts telling me about being responsible and how it's important not to call the incoming if there's not something happening.
Right.
It's like nobody saw anything, nobody heard anything. You're yelling incoming. The whole base goes crazy. These are the results. People lose sleep. They fired off all the flares. The captain's embarrassed to call command and tell them the flares are
Yeah.
and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And the captain is beside himself in rage, trying to figure out how this all started.
Uh-huh.
And of course, Staff Sergeant Anthony McCall knows how it started. And he doesn't want to tell the captain it was one of his men. So he's
Right.
there lecturing me. And while he's talking, I just keep probing the sand with a stick. He never asked me why I was there and not with the rest of the guys filling sandbags. And all the while he's talking, I'm probing away until I stopped. And he's staring at me, and all of a sudden his eyes got big, and he's looking down like, wait a minute, what are you doing?
Uh-huh.
And I'm just slowly spreading sand away. And sure enough, there's a 20-pound satchel charge wrapped in plastic and bamboo. It's got the tail ends of 2 fuse igniters pulled out. And they were American fuse igniters. They didn't work for us any better than they worked for Vietnamese, so they didn't work.
Right.
And they had fired this thing at like a mortar round into our base, hoping it would go off and, kill a bunch of Marines with shrapnel.
Oh, yeah.
20 pounds is a pretty good heavy charge with the penalite or something that they used as an explosive. And it was kind of a rocky green material.
Mm-hmm.
But like C4, it took another blast to set it off. That's why it had the blasting caps in it.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, you could basically drop kick C4 down the road. Nothing's going to happen. You actually have to ignite it, right?
Oh, you have to do that. You have to explode it.
Right, right.
You can shoot it and nothing will happen.
Yeah, you can drop it, you can throw it, it's basically inert until you put a blasting cap in it.
If you put a incendiary around like a tracer into it, it would burn furiously.
Yes.
It would actually burn hotter than the sun.
That's hot.
And it would burn very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And while it was burning, it would stick to anything.
Yes.
So you definitely did not want to try to kick it or step on it.
Right. So you got this 20-pound satchel charge, which is clearly what was incoming, right?
Like a giant square football.
Yeah.
So I'm mad because they shot that thing at me. It hit the sand over my head.
Uh-huh.
I want to get retribution, And so I used to call him Sergeant Mac when we were alone. Otherwise, it was always Staff Sergeant.
Yes.
I gave him that respect because he deserved it.
So that's an interesting differentiation between the Army and the Marine Corps. Because I trained with I was military police, so I trained with the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps will call their staff sergeants Staff Sergeant, whereas the Army, everyone's a sergeant until you reach a high level. So I always found that interesting. That's a lot of respect.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you called him Staff Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and when we were alone, I called him Sergeant Mac.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, so he asked me, he says, what do you want to do with that? And I said, well, Sergeant Mac, I intend to take it off base and blow it. I've got all this stuff I need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I was the undesignated platoon demo man. I carried all the blasting caps.
Oh, okay.
I didn't trust anybody to carry blasting caps.
Yeah.
If they needed them, they came to me. This is all without authority.
Mm-hmm.
I just did it.
Right. And no one challenged you on it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody will assume you know what you're. If you know what you're doing and you look like you know what you're doing, they assume you got the deal.
If you own it, they're not going to bother you,
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the blasting caps came in a round, foam padded container, and they had holes in the foam for the caps so that they wouldn't get jarred or banged or anything.
Yeah.
A blasting cap is very dangerous. It can go off when you drop it.
Mm-hmm.
It can go off from heat. It can go off from being squeezed too hard. Like when you poked a fuse into the blasting cap, you did it gently. And then when you push that into a stick of C4, you poke the hole in with a tool first and inserted the cap. You didn't push the cap in. I had learned all these lessons in Camp Pendleton, and I paid attention to these lessons like a hawk. And in fact, I took a correspondence course in mind flaying because I needed to know, if I was going to be out with my Marines, I needed to know how things worked.
Yeah.
What made them blow up and how you commanded it to do it. And what kind of pattern do you lay for mines anyway? What do you want to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people think you just scatter them around. Well, that's not the way it works.
Right. There's a method, right?
Yeah, you lay the mines out so that you would literally scare the enemy into a field of fire where you could get them with the other weapons.
Yeah.
You didn't want them running away. You wanted them running one direction or another.
Yeah, you basically are funneling them into your ambush.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got this 20-pound.
So I got this satchel.
Yeah.
And Sergeant Mac's eyes were bulging out of his head. And then he's beginning to realize, well, now I got something to tell the captain. There was not a false alarm.
Captain's going to be happy. You still don't have any flares, but the captain's going to be
happy. The
happy.
captain's going to be, his attitude will change 180 degrees in a heartbeat.
Oh, absolutely.
And he says, well, Sergeant Mac, not to be one lost for words, says, well, let's get all the dud ammo out of the dud ammo bunker and blow it together. I think, well, that sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
So we go down to the dud ammo bunker, and we've got 81 millimeter mortar rounds that didn't fire. We've got law rockets that people put on their shoulders, squeeze the trigger, and nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we were ordered to bring those back to the base.
Right.
Or blow them, use a grenade to blow them in place. You didn't want to leave them there for the enemy with a warhead in them.
Yeah.
So we had several law rockets, mortar rounds. There were probably even a couple of frag grenades that had been thrown and didn't do anything. So not everything we were given was 100%. Things were built as best man could make them. But out of 100% of whatever man made, you got to figure 20% of it's going to fail.
Absolutely.
10% from stupid things that didn't get done, and 10% because materials just didn't work.
Yeah.
Something in the line fell off. A spring disappeared, a hammer disappeared, whatever. Or you got fuzz in something, or dirt, or
Yeah.
So we've each got an armload of stuff. We start walking off base, and we did have a road with a gate, not a fixed gate, but a strand of concertina wire that had to be pulled back. And there were gun positions on either side. They were manned 24/7. And so we're walking down the road off the base. And I want to go, a good 500 meters out, find a nice hole, and put all this stuff down below ground level, at least 500 meters away from the base. Well, we're out about 60 meters. There's a shallow depression, not really a hole. And Sergeant Mac says, this'll work. And I'm looking at him, and I said, excuse me, Sergeant Mac, but I'm trying to explain, this is not really suitable for what we've got in our arms. He said, no, trust me, we are incoming, everybody get down, it'll be fine. I thought, yeah, it'll be fine because stuff will be flying around their heads. So I thought, well, live and learn. So I managed to move the material in such a way that most of the warheads were pointed away from the base. But they still weren't as far below ground level as I would have liked. And I pulled out a couple of sticks of C4, got my blasting caps out, my fuse, got a piece of fuse off, burned it, timed it, so I knew what 3 minutes would look like. Because I figured we're going to need time to get back on the base and get everybody down.
Right.
Because they don't even know what we're doing out here.
Right.
I mean, only the guys in the line saw us walk out here with this stuff. The others don't know anything.
Yeah. They're going to think something's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to yell outgoing, not incoming. And of course, when you yell outgoing, people don't tend to duck as much. So we got to yell incoming and outgoing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how that was going to work. So anyway, I got everything set up. He says, okay, wait till I get back on the base. So he runs down the road. So I wait till he gets down behind something, some sandbags and things. And he gives me a wave. I gave him a wave, pulled up my Zippo, lit the 2 fuses, and took off running. And I'm yelling, fire in the hole, fire in the hole. I figured, well, they'll know what that means. So I get to the base, and he's yelling outgoing, fire in the hole, everybody down. And sure enough, a minute later, kaboom, everything blows up. Well, nothing came sailing into the base, so we survived that. And it took a moment before our hearing returned.
Yeah.
But after our hearing returned, I heard this steak sizzling sound. And I stuck my head up, and in the barbed wire going around the base were about 200 trip flares, all sparkling away in the sunlight.
You set off the trip flares with your explosion.
And there's two guys, 2 NCOs from rockets, mad as hell because they've been out there for 3 hours in the hot sun putting trip flares in the wire, and we just set them all off in the daylight, you know. And they are outraged.
Oh, I'll bet.
I just took one look at Staff Sergeant McCall, and he at me, and I yelled, "Run!" We both went from different directions. I never did hear the end of that, but
I'll bet. Well, you were solely responsible for every pop flare on the planet being used,
yeah,
and then
now
all
I
the,
got all the
and all the trip
flares.
flares are on your I want to go back to something you said when you were talking about Staff Sergeant McCall.
Yes.
And you said that he was killed in action then
Yes.
over there. So were you there when that happened?
I was.
Do you mind talking about that?
No, not at all.
So what happened to Sergeant Mack?
So Sergeant Mack had been moved to another company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of our sister companies, and we were on a joint operation. So my company and his company, I think it was with Fox.
Mm-hmm.
So Hotel and Fox were working jointly, and they choppered us out to an island. And the ground was rock hard. I mean, it looked like sand, but it was hard.
Uh-huh.
It had been baked by the sun for who knows how long.
Centuries, probably.
Yeah. And anyway, we were supposed to be on a sweep coming from one direction. They were going across another, and we were supposed to meet up. So their group was going across a tree line.
Mm-hmm.
And my group was still on the sand coming in. So we had no cover.
Yeah.
We were coming in exposed. They had better cover, but quite frankly, I thought they were more dangerous where they were going. Well, his point fire team tripped a mine. The enemy had buried 105 shells
Mm-hmm.
that they captured vertically in the ground, and they put like a 8-pound pressure plate on the warhead.
Yeah.
and cover it. So small animals wouldn't bother it, but a person would set it off. And there were no civilians there at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew they were hunting Americans. Well, so as we were moving in, there was this explosion. You could see it out of the corner of your eye, and a column of smoke going up. And you knew that meant dead Marines.
Yeah.
There was no way out. Well, Sergeant McCall was further back in the column, and he was enraged that any of his Marines would get hurt for any reason. That's how responsible he felt. And he's running up to where that happened. And you can't look at the ground thoroughly when you're running.
No.
And even if you can, you better be a damn good trail reader not to trip something else. There could be an alternate detonation source there.
Yeah.
So I take off running. I'm at the head of my column. He's at the head. He's now at the head of his, and I'm yelling, "Stop!" I mean, just stop, not anything else. Stop! 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 Like, and I'm holding up a fist, like, hold it up. And he didn't even hear me. He was so intent on what he was going to do.
Yeah, he got that tunnel vision, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was praying he'd be okay. I had no thought of my own safety. It was just trying to get in front of him and stop him.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I had to stop him before he got too close to where they set that thing off. And sure enough, he hit the second one. So I saw the flash. I saw his body go up. I didn't see anything come down. And I'm still running across this open field to that position.
Yeah.
And my inner sixth sense told me I'd be safe where I was going in from. That the smartest thing to do if you're going to bury charges was somewhere near the tree line, not out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Like, again, like I said, mind warfare, you're trying to direct somebody to go somewhere. Or to stop them, you don't lay it out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I'm hearing, hold it up from my end. So I have to stop and go down to a knee with my rifle up to cover the guys behind me. And so I wasn't really allowed to get any closer. By then, his group had moved up to where he was,
Mm-hmm.
or where he would have been, to figure out what they're going to do about the situation. And they moved us a different direction. We moved back to the east to more or less shield them from anything coming the other way.
Yeah, because typically when you have that, there's an ambush somewhere coming afterwards, isn't there?
You would expect it.
Right.
You know, I mean,
right.
number one, now they know where you are.
Right.
And
they know you're dealing with casualties.
Yeah, which is ideal.
Yeah.
Anytime they can create casualties, they can get more dead than
right.
any other time.
Well, and the thing too that the enemy knows, especially in Vietnam, is that we don't leave our soldiers behind.
That's
so
right.
if they can injure or kill soldiers or Marines, they know that now they've slowed you down because you're not going to leave your people out there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a tactic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a tactic. So how many Marines did you lose that day then? Do you know?
I never heard.
Okay.
I was completely certain Sergeant McCall was gone.
Yeah.
And any Marines that had been in front of him, 3 or 4 possibly, were gone.
Right.
A 105 shell, the warhead, is very powerful. And there is shrapnel from the warhead and whatever munitions blew up stuff inside.
Yeah.
I had seen people that got hit by shrapnel, and it's not pretty.
No.
You see a guy standing there with a piece of rocket fin sticking out of his leg, or from a small mortar to a big warhead. Sometimes it leaves a body in pieces.
Mm-hmm. It's almost a matter of, I don't know if luck is the right word, but it's almost a matter of just, like, it's not the same every time, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's not. It's always different.
Yeah.
We ran into an NVA patrol one night from Liberty Bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and I was back in the column somewhere, tail end Charlie probably, and the point team opened up, and they were firing waist high, and they hit the point element of the other team, and there were 2 NVA that were wearing grenades on their belt, which exploded.
Oh.
They got hit by a bullet,
Yeah.
rifle fire, and exploded. So the next morning, we went back to the area to check it out. We found 2 bodies completely intact, except they were severed at the waist, like a razor blade.
Yeah.
So the trunks were on one side, the legs and shoes were over on the other. And those guys looked like they were wide awake.
They probably never knew what hit them, right?
You almost expected them to prop themselves up with their arms and say, "What happened?"
Yeah.
I mean, that's how uncannily real it looked. Except they didn't have any bodies; they were just their arms and their chest, you know. And
well, how did things like that impact you during the rest of your deployment? Right.
Well, number one, I never carried grenades.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on point. I'm not going to wear grenades.
No.
Any part of me. And I carried a gas mask bag that had my C4 and blasting caps and stuff in it. That was behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I had pop flares in my jungle pants. But I had no grenades ever.
Yeah.
I didn't carry them. I knew how to use them. I was not good at it. And I'd rather be the animal humper for some guy that could throw them.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Because they'd be twice as far away from me as when I threw them.
Exactly.
And one thing about the shape of a grenade, I know things about aerodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And we were taught to lob a grenade. In other words, you put it open in your hand, you're holding the spoon down, pull the pin, and you lob it. You don't throw it like a baseball. There's a reason for that. Because if you throw it like a baseball, it's going to go straight up and come straight back down. Every time. That's how a grenade works. I mean, that's the shape it's got. That's what it'll do. So on one operation, actually it was my final operation in Vietnam. We had been choppered into an area, and we spent 3 weeks patrolling across shrubs and dirt and clay and all that stuff. So we were pretty well worn out. And that night I had a section of the lines. I had a machine gun team, M60 team, and I had 3 fire teams. So I had 4 positions that I was responsible for. I was the team leader. And I had a radio, Brick 25. And I got everybody in and down for the night. Figured this was going to be, everything, just do your jobs, we'll all be fine. Have coffee with all you guys in the morning. Rah, rah, rah. And just after dark, I hear footsteps behind me, and there's an NCO with a new guy. He's an FNG, fucking new guy. His first night in Vietnam. He's had no orientation. He's had nobody sit down and talk to him about things, how things work. Nice, like I had been introduced calmly,
right,
respectfully, and I moved right in and had no problem. This poor kid had been flown right out from Okinawa. He was a replacement. He was put on the line and told to do his job. I had no time to babysit this guy.
Yeah.
My position, I had 1 man. So it was going to be 50% watch, him and I all night.
Yeah.
And I'm supervising the other positions too. They've all got, these two have 3, and this side has, the machine gun team is 4. But in my position, it's him, my buddy Ray and myself. And Ray and I went back a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Ray was a nice guy from Jacksonville, Florida. Very polite, Christian type of kid. I would have been proud to introduce him to my family, even my sisters,
Right.
He was just that nice a guy. Well, Ray and I had shared an adventure. On June 5th, 1968, my battalion went on the float phase, they call it. We became a battalion landing team. In World War II, that meant boats with, bows that dropped and you came ashore in waves like in Okinawa or Guadalcanal.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, it meant helicopters. So we were attached to a helicopter squadron. So the entire battalion went to Red Beach in Da Nang and was going to move to a carrier where our helicopters were. So in order to assure us on how safe this would be, they decided to have a couple of helicopters fly the command group to the ship and have lunch so the officers could have lunch and then fly back. And this would ensure the enlisted troops how safe this was.
Seems easy enough, right?
That's officer thinking 101.
Yes.
So the guys go to lunch. So we're sitting on a beach eating sand in the sun. We can't go swimming. Well, there's sharks in the water anyway.
Yeah.
And the Vietnamese troops use grenades to fish, so there's chum in the water all the time. That idea didn't work out too well. Anyway, we're sitting there. It's just, and of course, Da Nang Harbor itself is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Everything above water looks beautiful. I have no idea what it looks like underneath because I can't get under there. But it's very serene and pretty. Blue colors everywhere. And my blue is my favorite color.
Oh.
I see blue better than anything else. My blue eyes see better at night than the guys with the brown eyes and the green eyes, know. And so we're waiting, and all of a sudden, there's a cloud of smoke on the deck of the ship outside the harbor. Like, what are they trying to do out there? Well, it was the first helicopter.
Oh, no.
During their pre-flight, they unchained, you have to unchain the helicopters from the deck. Well, somebody screwed up. They only unchained one side on the lead helicopter. The minute the pilots lifted off, the thing tipped over and exploded. Fortunately, most everybody got out of the thing, but it was a burning wreck.
Yeah.
On a flight deck, where there's a lot of aviation fuel around, meaning jet fuel, because everything was turbine engines, so it was all jet fuel. So we're watching a cloud of smoke saying, yeah, that looks safe. Wonder what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
How are you going to improve on that act?
Yeah.
So anyway, the orders were just get on the damn helicopters. There was no functionary anything,
Right.
Just get your asses on the helicopters. So we flew to the ship. I don't know the name of the ship. To this day, I'm pissed off that I never got to learn the name of the ship. It was a World War II carrier. It was a wood flight deck. I didn't even know the Navy had any wood flight decks left.
No.
This thing had served in World War II, Korea, and now it's serving in Vietnam. So it was fighting Japanese at one point, probably with Wildcats and Hellcats,
Yeah.
Now we got all these helicopters on there. So we're hustled below decks, very tight formation, because the stairwells are all narrow.
Mm-hmm.
The porthole, or the entrance holes between the bulkheads, are narrow.
Right.
I mean, the guys in World War II must have been small guys, because us guys with our gear on, we could barely even fit through these things. You know?
Uh-huh.
And we're going down into the bowels of the ship. Our quarters are somewhere in the stern down low. There are no portholes. There are no windows, you know. And so we're climbing downstairs and going through hatches, and finally we get to an area with bunk beds, and it's all vertical bunk beds out of rails, you know. So we each get a mattress and a bunk. And it didn't take long to figure out that the air conditioning was provided by these ducts that came down, and they opened up just above the floor, and they blew out sideways. Well, cool air doesn't rise.
No, it sinks.
It settles.
Yeah.
So blowing the cool air on the floor didn't do any good for the guys in the top bunks, like me.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up throwing the mattresses on the floor and sleeping on the deck. We didn't sleep on the racks at all. So that's where we were every night, down on the deck. And one morning, my platoon sergeant comes to me and says, we got a detail for you. You got a little bit of scrubbing work to do. So like, grab that pail and grab that mop and follow me. So he's leading me somewhere, and he turns me over to a seaman. So there's a sailor leading me through up and down ladders and around corners, and you know, I'm thoroughly lost.
Yeah.
I have no way to know direction. I can't read. I mean, I can read the numbers on the bulkheads, but they don't mean anything to me.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know which ones be ahead of one or above one or whatever. And finally, we come to a stairwell. And on this stairwell is a lot of, not a lot, but there is some soot on the floor from people climbing up and down the gangway and maneuvering. And my job is to mop this deck.
Mm-hmm.
Squeaky clean. Well, I've never used a mop in my life. I can push a broom, but I don't know anything about mops. So I'm standing there pushing water around, trying to get this thing to pick stuff up.
Uh-huh.
And what I found out later, it was asbestos, because all the pipes and everything were covered in this asbestos material, which deteriorates and falls to the floor. And this is all throughout the ship. And I know you don't want to breathe asbestos. It's bad for your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't clear out. So I'm holding my breath and pushing the mop. And a sailor comes along and says, "Marine, who the hell ever taught you to use a mop?" And I said, "Nobody's ever taught me to use a mop." He grabs it away from me, rinses it out in a bucket, and he starts showing me the procedure. And actually, it's doing a good job. He knows what he's doing, and I'm watching intently, trying to learn everything, you know, quickly.
Right.
And a Navy officer comes down the gangway. I don't know what he is, but he had to be more than an ensign, because this guy snapped to attention like a rocket ship.
Uh-huh.
And the officer berated him just terribly. Stopped him from instead of asking him what's going on, you know, I mean, I'm plainly standing there,
Right.
you know, with nothing in my hands. Why am I watching a sailor scrub the floor? Well, the officer didn't bother to put two and two together. He just immediately starts screaming at the sailor, "You listen this, and you missed that spot, and you're just," he said, "you better be doing a good job. This the compartment better be spotless when I get back." And I'm looking at him like, "You're an idiot." I'm the one that should be getting yelled at.
Right.
I mean, I'll take what's coming to me, even if I don't like it. I mean, it's irresponsible for him to just start chewing the jailer out without knowing what's going on. And I'm trying to interrupt. He won't even listen to me. I mean, how do you interrupt an officer?
Well, sometimes you just don't.
there really isn't. I had never been trained in a procedure.
Mm-hmm.
I'd barely been trained on how to report to an officer, much less how to interrupt one.
Right.
You know. And I wanted to just shout out, it's my duty, you know. So while this was still going on, I thought, well, time to leave, and I did. And somehow, I found a PX, which sold Cokes and hot dogs. And I happened to have a novel in my back pocket that I'd been reading. I thought, time for a break.
Mm-hmm.
And I deserve a lunch.
Yes.
I don't know where the mess hall is. I can't go there anyway. So I figured, well, time for a break. So I bought a bottle of pop and a hot dog, shoved them each in a pocket, and I headed for the forecastle. I got to the forecastle. It was deserted. I went forward to the capstan. The big capstans are there like giant mushrooms. I sat down, pulled out my hot dog, pulled out my Coke, and read my book. I spent the whole afternoon staring out the hawse, looking at the ocean going by. And that was my entertainment for the day.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, by now I'd had a second hot dog and a Coke. And I packed all my stuff up, put my book in my pocket, and started heading back to the aft end of the ship, asked 100 people 100 questions, and found my compartment.
Oh. Yeah, that's huge because that's a big boat.
My platoon sergeant was standing there waiting for me.
Uh-huh.
Did I mention I don't have a bucket and a swab anymore? He says, where the hell have you been? And I just looked all worn out.
Right.
I said, Sergeant, I said, I've talked to so many sailors on this boat. I kept telling them where I was supposed to go, and they kept sending me this way and sending me that. And he's laughing and berating, like, what a story, hey, like, these idiots listen to these sailors, they're giving him, they're probably sending him directly the opposite of where he's supposed to be. And he thinks I'm doing all this.
Yeah.
And inside I'm thinking, foo on you, I've been reading my book in the forecastle. I know what a forecastle is, and I knew where it was, so that's where I went. So from then on, the next 3 days, I was in the forecastle every day, reading more. I finished my book.
Oh.
It's time to start a new one, so I went and bought a new one. And never told anybody about that, of course. So we get to Subic Bay on Luzon in the Philippines. And the first thing we do is switch ships.
Mm-hmm.
So we march off onto the dock from the one big giant World War II carrier to the somewhat smaller, brand new helicopter carrier, LPH-10 Tripoli.
Yeah.
So this boat is brand new to Vietnam. It's had one med cruise. So it's a fairly new boat. I mean, to us it was like brand new.
Shiny and new.
I mean, the fixtures in the men's room, the head, are all pristine. Everything is new.
Yeah.
I was thrilled. You could see yourself in a mirror that didn't have cracks in it and things. And, and the showers all worked.
Yeah.
And they all had plenty of hot water. And the heads flushed when you wanted them to, So it was a great experience. So we put a lot of our gear aboard ship. Then we disembarked, and they put us in huts, Quonset huts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in huts on Luzon, and I'm thinking of all the history I know about it from World War II, how the the army evacuated and went through Singapore and did the death march and that kind of thing. And how the Japanese infiltrated and moved in, took over Manila and everything else, captured many people. And again, I'm hoping that the military will give us at least a lecture on what.
Yeah, a little tour or something, right? Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
So basically, we were there to pick up replacements, new people, and to train them to work with us and get them comfortable with us and learn their names and that kind of thing. And, we'll be here, they told us 3 weeks before we go back to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is 7 months in country, and now I'm in Luzon. I've never had R&R. Don't know if I'll ever get R&R. I never did.
Yeah.
And we got some new people. They were nice young guys, all PFCs, And I was a Lance Corporal at this time. So I'm one step away from an NCO. And I had just enough authority that I would do dirty work with my guys.
Yeah.
But at least I gave the orders like where it goes.
Yeah.
We'd pile it up, but we'd all pile it up, but I gave the order where to put it.
Exactly.
Out in the field, rank didn't matter that much. I mean, it was by ability.
Right.
If you had the ability to be a squad leader, everybody looked to you like a squad leader. If you were a good team leader, you were the team leader. Didn't matter who outranked you by so many days or whatever, and it never came up.
Yeah.
And there were sometimes I had corporals that were ordered to listen to me. I didn't outrank them, but I was the one in control, and that's the way the military wanted it.
Right. There's authority and there's position.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're bringing in these new guys, and you're getting them ready to go back then, right, to
so
Vietnam.
We're getting ready to go back. We get on the new ship, and we set sail for Da Nang, 4 days away. So our compartment, my 3rd platoon, is in a compartment at the aft end of the ship. It's a 400-man compartment. I've got a bunk on top because I wanted to be right next to the loudspeaker, because everything the Navy and Marine Corps wants comes out of that loudspeaker, and I didn't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to get my people moving at the right time and do the right thing. And I'm a real sound sleeper, so when I'm not in Vietnam, in the country, out in the field, I'm half awake all day long anyway.
Right.
But on a ship, I'm gone. I'm zoned out. I've got a real mattress. You know? It was a pleasure to be aboard ship. And the chow was excellent. And they had cold chocolate milk if you wanted it, or hot coffee if you wanted it. Anything you wanted was right there. You just got up and got it. And I decided shipboard life can never be bad. I mean, I don't care what they have me doing. It's good to be on the ship. And of course, the seamen are the guys working to keep the actual ship moving and floating. The Marines are just playing games.
You're passengers.
We're practicing staying in shape.
Right.
To do the job we got to do in the jungle.
Right.
And the seamen have no idea what that's about, just like we don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But we respect each other's position. I give them as much credit. I mean, they're as big a target as we are off the coast of Vietnam.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like to sleep every night knowing I could be rocketed at any time, And that's generally why the ship stayed at least 3 miles offshore. So
So you said it was like it's a 3-day sail from where you were at?
It's 4 days.
4 days.
4 days. Yeah, we'll get there on the 4th day.
Okay. All right.
So it's at least 3 nights,
Yeah.
sometimes 4 en route. So first night, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, feel good. I look around, everybody's gone. I'm thinking, oh God. Even being next to the speaker, I didn't hear the orders.
Uh-huh.
So I climbed down. I'm on the top bunk. I got to climb down to the deck. I had my gear was, I think, under my mattress. I pull out my utility clothes, and I put on my utilities and my cover, and I'm about to leave the compartment, and I hear a snore. So I start searching. Well, in the farthest corner in the back, on the bottom bunk, is my buddy Ray. He's in my fire team.
Okay.
Ray, wake up. What's going on? I don't know, but you need to get dressed. Put your utilities on. Because the first order we get every day is like what we're supposed to wear.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're supposed to
Uniform of the day.
wear. Utilities are the work clothes, so we put on our work clothes. So somewhere I looked around and I found a rag. And I handed it to Ray. And he says, what do I do with this? I said, anybody comes along we don't know, you polish whatever's directly in front of you and pay no attention to the bilge that comes out of my mouth because I'm going to be screaming at you the whole time. Nobody interrupts a Marine work detail. I don't care if you're an admiral, you don't interrupt a work meeting.
Right.
Because you'll be working right next to that guy if you don't watch it. You know?
Yeah.
So it's going to be smoke and mirrors, Ray. That's all we're going to do is smoke and mirrors. So we go up to the hangar deck, which is right up this big flight of stairs. We actually had a flight of stairs, not a ladder. It was actually stairs.
An actual stairwell.
I mean, you could move, I don't know, 4 to 6 guys with gear on up these stairwells. So I go up the stairs. It's like going into an auditorium. You're looking at a football field full of helicopters and boxes of Navy stuff and no people. And this normally is busy 24/7.
Yeah.
You got gunners fixing, repairing machine guns, mechanics crawling around helicopters, pilots checking things out with the mechanics. I mean, there's officers enlisted everywhere, plus all the Navy guys doing Navy stuff, for the ship, and nobody's home. So Ray and I went from one end to the other and back. Never found anybody. And Ray had a quirk. He was superstitious. So when he was superstitious, he became a nervous Nelly. So I had to keep calming him down the whole time. Well, let's go back to the compartment. Well, that made sense. So he calmed down and we went back to the compartment. I said, let's go below decks and check things out down there. So we go below decks. So I'm walking along the deck, and we found the barber shop, the PX, a supply bin. Everything is chained and locked up. You can't get into anything. There's big padlocks on everything. And I thought, does the Navy not trust anybody? And we go forward to a watertight door, which I figured out was the entrance to the Navy quarters, which are off limits to Marines.
Right.
I undogged the door. All I want to do is find somebody. I opened the door, and I entered the Navy compartment. I said, Ray, you got to see this. Ray comes through. Everything's on the deck. Mattresses, pillowcases, sheets. It's all on the deck, literally. And I said, I don't know what kind of Navy this is, but these guys have pillow fights. What the hell is going on around here? Ray didn't know.
Yeah.
So we got out of there, and I'm dogging the door down the way I found it, We walked back past, I said, let's go back to the compartment. So we go back to the compartment. And Ray is like a puppy. You got to lead him to everything you want to do him to do next.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just leading him around like I did usually. And, you know, we sat down in the bunk, and I said, something's got to happen sooner or later. Let's go back up to the hangar deck. So we went back up to the hangar deck. And this time, I'm looking across the hangar deck, and the door to the elevators that take the helicopters up to the flight deck is ajar about this far. And I realize we can go out and look at over there and look at the ocean, which is really the Red China Sea.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the China Sea, and it's as flat as a mirror. The sunlight is coming at us like a laser beam. There's not a ripple on the water.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I know the ship is moving. I can sense it from through my feet. And I said, you know, I said, a boat this size has to, Ray is from Jacksonville, Florida. He's been around small boats.
Right.
I said, a boat this size has to do at least 10 knots in order for them to steer it. I want to take a look outside the hull. So I squeezed through the door in the frame member there, and I'm sticking my head out. And of course, I can't see the bow because it curves away from me.
Yeah.
But I can see the wake. And sure enough, I'm figuring we're doing 10 knots. And from outside the hull, I hear a cough. And I'm going, you know, mentally I'm going, oh my gosh. So I have to come back inside the ship to turn around and squeeze out the other side. All of us had the same social study books in high school. All those books featured a picture of New York tenements where they hung the laundry from one building to the other.
Right.
So every kid in America in public school saw that picture. The entire side of the ship, 3,000 men in their underwear, are sitting on these little tiny little ledges with steel cable in front of them, leaning over the cable like this. I mean, there are row after row after row. They cover the whole stern of the ship, and I'm staring at them with my mouth wide open. I have never heard of this. I don't know what the hell they're doing. And of course, I'm in green fatigues, you know, I stand out like a sore thumb. And my mind is racing through scenarios. Like, why would you want everybody outside the hull?
Right. In their underwear.
Radiation exposure. Well, no, we're not nuclear. We don't have any radiation on this ship.
Right.
What kind of exposure, you know? So I look down, the guys closest to me, what are the odds? My platoon. Corpsman I know very well on the end.
Mm-hmm.
Named Jeff Haynes. He lives in Marine City, California. I said to him, Jeff, and this guy looks like death. He's got stringy black hair, no color at all in his body. He's bleach white.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at me, and I said, what the hell kind of drill is this? And he says, slowly, he says, Roach, when I get up, I'm going to kill you. And he punches the guy next to him. I don't remember who that was, but gives him a good elbow in the side. Says, look who wants to know what kind of drill this is. So I get a look. He punches the guy next to him. This goes all, that's 30 men. It goes right down the line. They're punching each other like, you know, whatever it is we went through, look who doesn't know what's going on, you know. And of course, they're all staring daggers at me.
Yeah.
I can feel the heat. And finally, the corpsman looks at me and says, you idiot. He says, we went through a typhoon last night. He says, this ship was rolling 40 degrees side to side, going up and down and turning all at the same time all night long. Where were they? Where were you? And I said, asleep.
Slept through the whole
motion
thing.
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
So I got rocked all night long, and so did Ray, because he didn't wake up. And the two of us just had a great night's sleep, and there's nobody there, you know. So I go back inside the hall, grab Ray. I said, Ray, you've got to see this. And I lean him outside. After a few minutes, he comes back and he says, what kind of drill is that? And I explained about the typhoon. And I said, you know what this means, Ray? There's nobody in the mess hall. We can get coffee. So we head to the mess hall to just hoping to find some hot coffee.
Uh-huh.
We get to the mess hall. It's a buffet. You serve yourself. Every buffet table is full. They've got 10 kinds of eggs, 10 kinds of French toast, 5 kinds of steaks, pork chops. Anything you want is cooked and ready to go, and it's steaming hot. I've never been at the front line in a mess hall in my life. I'm always coming in tailed and Charlie getting scraps.
Mm-hmm.
So Ray and I both fill our, well, we were stunned. So I yelled, ahoy. I didn't even know if Navy used that anymore. I said, ahoy, anybody on deck? Well, out from the back comes a short guy with a cigar and an apron wrapped around him. And I figured, and he's got tattoos, hash marks tattooed from his wrist to his elbow. He'd been in the Navy a long, long time.
Yes, he had.
So I figured he's got to be at least a chief. I said, Chief, is it all right if we grab chow? And he says, help yourselves, boys. Grab some coffee and take that table over there, and I'll join you in a minute. Sounded good to me. So we filled our trays, and we got more food than we can eat, but we want to taste everything.
Yeah.
Watermelon. Oh, I haven't seen fresh fruit in a long time. Bananas. Anyway, and the steaks were good, instead of being like the Marine Corps type where they were hard as rocks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the chief came over, sat down, told us war stories for 10 years, going back to World War II and Korea. And I was more impressed than ever. And then he told us about the current situation. The Navy keeps sending me all these yahoos, that's what he called them, and they complain. We don't have enough men. It's not enough hours. It's too much work. He says, well, I'll tell you what. He stuck his chest out and he says, took a puff on his cigar. He says, I did all this myself this morning. You know, in 20 minutes, I'll clear it all out, clean everything up, and serve lunch for 3,000 men.
He's quite a guy.
And if nobody comes to eat that, I'll tear it all down and start dinner. It says, if one of those yahoos ever complains at me again, he's going to be doing the whole thing all day long.
Well, it sounds like you and Ray had quite an adventure on that ship.
I loved every minute of it.
I'll bet.
The funny thing is, well, not funny, but the end result was the ship itself actually got torn up pretty good in the typhoon.
Mm-hmm.
It lost all its antennas, radar, all that stuff on the bridge was gone. We had a destroyer escort they were talking to with a walkie-talkie, World War II style, from the bridge. As long as the batteries worked in that. That was the only communication they had. Well, the electricians, rigged a new antenna for the radios.
Right.
And the helicopters had all been chained down inside, so they were intact. But the pilots were pretty rattled up.
Oh, I'll bet.
A lot of them never had sea duty, and this was not the way they wanted to start their Marine Corps career. Well, the shipboard adventure was very interesting, and we knew from the damage done to the ship in that storm that it was going to have to go to Subic Bay to get a refit. That was the nearest Navy repair facility. So everybody on the ground knew the ship was going to be going back. And when a Navy ship with Marine gear on it goes somewhere, it's got to have a Marine guard. Nobody wants the Navy blowing themselves up with Marine gear,
That makes sense.
not knowing what it might have in it.
Right.
It was incendiary. I mean, it could be dangerous in a fire if nobody knew it was there.
Right. Well, I want to stop you there because so you were able to refit with your pop flares after the pop flare incident from earlier.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you got your new pop flares. I just wanted to point that out because I knew you guys had run out. But
Yeah, that was one of 2 pop flare wars in 1968.
So they need someone to guard your equipment on this ship or boat.
So we've been deployed. We're back outside north of Da Nang, or probably south of Da Nang. We were on a mission. I was on radio watch, and the battalion radio man called up for a radio check. I gave him the signal that all was clear, and he came back and said, "We need the name of one man to go back with the ship." Well, what was I supposed to do? I gave him my name.
Right.
My serial number, and I didn't say anything to anybody. So one day, this is still in June,
Mm-hmm.
and probably the end of June, we went back to 1st Marine Division. They wanted to give us a night off and a hot evening meal and a hot breakfast, before they put us back in the field again.
Oh yeah.
And while I was in a chow line, about 300 strong, I was near the end. My platoon commander was a staff sergeant named Harkins. And this was the same staff sergeant that had been the admin guy for the colonel.
I was going to say the name sounded familiar. Oh yes.
So he comes up to me with no teeth, and he's telling me, "You're going to the head of the line. Lieutenant Stewart will pick you up in a Jeep with your gear, so be ready to go." And that was his order. He didn't know anything why or whatever, but he had to get me ready.
Mm-hmm.
So he marched me up to the head of the line, took the plate in the silverware from the guy at the head and gave it to me, knocks on the door, and mess hall chief came, and Harkins told him, "This man eats now and he eats first." Well, the mess hall, it was probably Chief Petty Officer. "I determine when we open the mess hall," and he starts going through all this bullshit.
Right.
And the Staff Sergeant Harkins said, "You can explain that to Colonel Love." Well, he decided he didn't want to do that, so he let me in.
That wasn't a fight he wanted to have, huh?
No. So I'm in the mess hall by myself, eating whatever I want. It's all fresh, which was unusual for me.
Mm-hmm.
And they had things like Jell-O that was still Jell-O. It wasn't soup. I'd never seen that in the Navy. So I had a big bowl of Jell-O because I liked it. Anyway, I ate real quick, came out, turned my gear to the next guy, and I had to run down a hill across the road up another hill to our barracks where my gear was.
Mm-hmm.
And by now, my whole platoon is watching this. "What's going on, man? We're with you, man. They can't touch you, man." They think I'm going to criminal court or something.
They think you've been arrested.
I'm being court-martialed. And they're ready to grab their rifles and, say that's not going to happen. I was their point man. They didn't want to lose me.
Right.
I just waved. It's like, "It's okay, it's okay." So I got my gear all together, and I just sat there until I heard a Jeep coming. And I grabbed my gear, and I started down the hill. And instead of running straight down the hill, I ran a diagonal towards the main gate. So the lieutenant, who had been my first platoon commander, he knew me.
Mm-hmm.
He was now the XO. He had to drive the Jeep to catch up to me. And he's looking at me like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he's just crawling along.
Mm-hmm. Well,
by now, the guys in the mess hall line have figured out what's going on, and they're yelling, "He's going back to the ship." So they're charging down the hill, throwing canteen cups and silver. I mean, it looked like a herd of Vikings, you know.
Right.
I jumped in the Jeep, and with my left foot, I stamped on the accelerator foot of the lieutenant, and away we went. He was in first gear, and boy, we showered those guys with a shower of rocks. We're barreling at the gate. They opened the gate. We went right through it. Lieutenant's hanging on the steering wheel for dear life. He doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
I finally let off the gas, and he's looking at me like, you know, you're an idiot. But he continued driving. So we got on a helicopter there. We flew out to the ship, which was 3 miles offshore.
Uh-huh.
And away we went back to Subic Bay. So 4 days later, we arrived in Subic, and I had already stood a watch on the gear, so I had a free afternoon. And I wandered up the hangar deck just to watch the mechanics work on the helicopters. That was my favorite thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were machine gunners and ammo loaders and all that kind of stuff. And I had no interest in that stuff. You know, I had plenty of bang, bang, bang on the ground. I didn't need to look at it.
Yeah.
But the helicopters fascinated me. And the Navy had 2 guys on a cherry picker extended to the overhead, the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And there was about a 12-foot S-shaped crack in the ceiling. That's 1.5-inch plate steel.
It took a lot to make that happen.
Yeah, a lot of torsion on the ship to
Right.
crack, and that doesn't mean it's the only crack, you know. So they were fixing things as they found them. Anyway, there's 2 guys up there with oxyacetylene torches, and they're welding away, and those things are 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
You think if they're going to do that on anything on the ship, they would first check to see what's on the other side of the steel.
You would think.
You would assume on a ship full of explosive jet fuel,
Right.
which is what those helicopters ran on,
Yeah.
that this would be a good idea. They didn't do that. So out of officer country, at the bow end of the ship, comes this chief petty officer running down the gangway yelling, "Stop the welding, stop the..." Well, of course, they can't hear him. Finally, he ends up on a platform, and he's doing this, you know, and somebody on the deck finally spotted him, and they were able to signal the guys, turn off the torches.
Uh-huh.
And he's looking around, and he's yelling, he says, "I need 2 volunteers." Well, there was myself and one other Marine just standing around. We looked out at him like, "What do you need, Chief?" He says, "I need help up here." Okay, so we had no details, so we're going up the gangway.
Uh-huh.
He leads us into officer country, which is off limits, and across the ship. Now we're in the Admiral's stateroom,
Oh.
and it was a beautiful facility. He had couches, red leather, teak walls, and above his desk was a chrome-plated AK-47 that somebody gave him. I thought it looked stupid. I would have rather seen a picture of Admiral Nelson or something.
Right,
You know?
right.
Anybody. John Paul Jones, you know. But what the Navy had done is they had welded the carpet in the Admiral's bedroom to the deck.
Oh, yeah.
And of course they set fire to it. So we go in the Admiral's bedroom. He's the only man on the ship with a bed.
Right.
And he's got a queen-size bed. He has to crawl over the bed to get to his closet every time. But he's got his bed. Maybe he had a bad back, I don't know.
Yeah, he's living large, though, for sure.
But his carpet was orange.
Uh-huh.
And of course the torches burned a big S-shaped swath through the carpet.
Right.
And these guys didn't know anything about carpet. You know, I learned later when you're pulling up carpet, you just cut it into strips, roll the strips up and haul it out.
Right.
Throw it away. So the chief is determined to roll up the carpet. Well, so he and a sailor are holding up the bed.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy, the mariner, is at the other end, and we're in the process of rolling up this apartment-sized piece of carpet.
Yeah, the whole thing at once.
And of course, it's getting thicker and thicker. And I thought, this is not going out the hatch
Yeah.
in one piece. It's just, there's no way it's going to bend at the door. But the chief is giving the orders. What can we say? We volunteered. So I'm at the bow end of this thing, pulling it. And inch by inch, it's starting to go through the first doorway.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is to do this before the admiral comes back from his shoreline lunch date. Guess who walks in? I'm standing there in a marine utility uniform, no cover, no insignias, no rank. And he has no idea why I'm in his compartment at all. I immediately yell, attention, Admiral on deck, and go to attention. I can't salute because I'm not wearing a cover. Marines never salute without a cover. And on a work detail, you don't wear the cover necessarily. I had it in my belt behind me. So he just stands there, and it's like a volcano going off. He's getting, from the neck up, he starts getting redder and redder, and he's fuming. Let's just say he knew language my DIs never learned. They would have, I'm sure it would have had an immediate effect. I just stood at attention.
Mm-hmm.
So this tirade goes on for a minute or so, and finally gets it all of a system, and he's yelling, what the hell is going on, you know? Well, the petty officer is yelling, it's okay, Admiral, it's okay. And the Admiral yells, I'm the only one that decides what's okay on my ship. Who the hell is that? So the chief petty officer comes out, and he's trying to get his little white cap on.
Uh-huh.
The new one the Navy's had gone to. And he's saluting like a maniac. I mean, instead of just saluting, he's like Donald Duck. You know?
Hitting himself in the head and everything else, right?
And the Admiral's looking at him like, slow down and talk to me, you know. And the chief explains briefly what happened with the welders and the carpet. The Admiral points at me and he says, how many more of them have you got in here? He says, just one. He said, get him out here. So the other Marine comes out and falls in beside me. And then he proceeds to tell the chief, you get Navy personnel up here. You never bring Marine enlisted up here. I mean, the only Marines up there are pilots, you know, or the colonel. They're not supposed to be non-coms or enlisted up there. I mean, we've seen the secret sanctum, you know.
Right. Now his secret's out.
Yeah. He's got a bed.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. The other Marine I knew enough not to spread that word around.
Yeah.
So he yells, you two, out of here. And as we passed him, he kind of whispered, you guys are okay. So we were laughing all the way down across the ship. We get down to the midpoint on the gangway, and there's a bunch of Filipinos in white coats smoking. Well, these are the stewards that serve the officers and cook for the officers. And they're gabbling away in big Filipino, which I took 4 years of German. I've been exposed to a little bit of Spanish, but Filipino is an entirely different level. It's just gobbledygook.
There was no figuring that out, was there?
No, there's nothing similar to any European language.
Right.
And I've been able to speak with people from Belgium and Holland, and but Filipino wasn't going to work. Anyway, they're looking at my new friend like he's a long lost brother, and they start hugging him, and you know, and now he's talking to in Filipino.
Oh.
And I'm watching all this, and he leans over and he says to me, I married one of them.
Oh.
He says, I was living in the Philippines when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. So that kind of explains the whole thing.
Right.
So when he went to boot camp, it was his first trip to the United States. His mother was an embassy worker, and so she had a diplomatic passport, and they had been serving the embassy in Manila when she got transferred to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to get up there and see his mom. And of course, a tour in Vietnam was next.
Right.
And he was okay with that. You know, he's like, you know, I want to serve the country. So he's automatically applying for citizenship too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his mom married an American. So anyway, the stewards are, you know, glad to see us and everything, and they knew we just did a favor for the admiral, you know.
Yeah.
So they said, listen, at mealtime, you guys are on work detail right here. You come up here, we'll feed you good. In the evening, we all get to, after we clear the officers' food away, we serve dessert, and we get to watch the admiral's movie. You can join us. Well, that sounded good to me.
Yeah.
Because on the 4 days over to the Philippines, on the hangar deck, we were watching Hopalong Cassidy. The film was full of holes, and half the time the reels weren't even in order. We were a little tired of military movies. You know?
I'll bet. I'll bet.
In Vietnam, they showed us the perils of, no, what was it? Tammy and the Millionaire.
Uh-huh.
I saw Tammy and the Millionaire 3 times. The third time, we burned down the projection booth with the film in it. So they'd never show it to us again.
You guys probably knew all the words, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that evening, I went up to the officers' mess, joined my buddy. We had a really fine, it was fried chicken. We had our choice of everything. Got served first. So we had really good chicken, the best I've ever had. I mean, that food would have been a 5-star hotel would have been embarrassed compared to that food.
Wow.
It was so good.
Wow.
So at the end of the meal, the stewards went into the mess or the wardroom, cleared all the dishes out, and they served the officers sundaes on a plate. Every setting had a sundae, and we walked in with them. Well, when I walked in, it was dark,
Mm-hmm.
so I really couldn't see much, other than the fact it was an awfully long table, and it was all Marine Corps on the far side and Navy on the near side. Well, I sat at the end with the steward, so I was on the Navy side. So the Admiral pressed a button, a screen came down. He had a big leather armchair.
Uh-huh.
We had little square, typical chairs.
Yeah.
And the movie was Perils of the Pauline, starring Elke Summer. European version. She was naked through most of the movie. I've been in love with Elke Summer ever since.
Oh, I'll bet. She was quite yeah.
I mean, she was lean and athletic, and that's the way I like my women. And at 18, I'd never seen anything. I never even heard of a movie like that.
Right.
So that was pretty fantastic. Not that she did anything unusual other than being naked.
Right. She wasn't hard to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course not.
Whether she was swimming or whatever was good. Everything was good.
I could tell by your face, like you can still see that movie in your head.
I'll never forget that movie.
Oh, I'll bet. It was way better than Hopalong Cassidy.
So at the end of the movie, Admiral presses a button, the screen goes up, he starts to rise, we all start to get up, and he yells, "As you were," so remain seated. So now the Admiral's got to get out of his chair and walk behind all the Navy,
Mm-hmm.
from captain to commanders and everybody on deck. It was all in rank. All the top rank was at the far end of the table. So he's walking behind all these men. And there was probably 1,000 years worth of naval experience sitting there.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys had been in for a while, and they knew ships and tactics. And it would have been interesting to hear all their stories. So the lights are on. Who am I sitting across from? It's my CO and my XO.
Oh. Oh, no.
XO was Lieutenant Stewart, my former platoon commander, and I knew the captain as well.
Yeah.
I'd talked to him a few times. With my gray hair, I looked older than at 18, I looked older than anybody. So it was not uncommon for an officer to stop me and question me like I was a lieutenant.
Yeah.
When I wasn't even a corporal yet.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, the admiral's coming down the row. He sees me in my utilities. He knows me. He can't think of from where. 4 hours ago he was chewing my ass out.
Right.
So he leans over and starts giving me a shoulder massage. How you doing, Marine? I said, oh, just fine, sir. Good to be in your command. He says, that's what I like to hear, and he walks out smiling. So my two officers are looking at me like, oh my God, he knows the admiral. He might even be related to the admiral. And of course, neither one of them knows why I'm in the wardroom.
Right.
And if anybody asks me who I belong to, I'm going to point to them. And they're terrified that might happen at any moment. So after the admirals leaves, I get up with the stewards and we leave. So I beat it back down to my compartment real quick, like nothing ever happened. So I never said anything to anybody. They never said anything to anybody. And I've met both of them since, years later, and neither one of them ever asked me about that incident.
I'll bet.
They always pretended like they knew everything. And I was happy with that because I didn't want to explain it.
It was a win-win situation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, no foul, no harm, no foul.
Right. So you're there. So you said this is late June. You're in the Philippines. How far into your deployment are you?
I had been there 7 months.
Okay.
Out of a 13-month tour.
All right. So you're about halfway through at this point.
A little more.
Yeah. Okay.
So we go back ashore. And of course, we end up back at our old base at Liberty Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
The area has become hot again. The NBA have been moving around since we left. And I-Corps decided they wanted to secure it. Because from there, it was a straight shot into Da Nang.
Yeah.
So now we're back on our old base, and all our gear is out at sea. Figure that one out. Anyway, we were doing our duty, patrolling whenever. And I guess I should tell you about one patrol in particular. We were reaching the outskirts of our patrol area, and we came across a bunch of villagers carrying pretty much as many of their personal belongings as they could carry.
Mm-hmm.
And we asked them what was going on. And Andy, who had been my first team leader, spoke pretty good Pidgin Vietnamese. So he's interrogating them. I'm trying to help as much as I know. And they explained that they've got to get out of their ville before dark when curfew starts because the NVA move in. And the NVA have been occupying the ville at night, eating their food, burning their candles. I mean, these people had nothing. They lived in bamboo huts, with dirt floors. They didn't have furniture. They slept on the ground on mats. And the NVA would come in and disrupt everything and, felt like they had the freedom to do this anytime, anywhere. And so they would evacuate the village and go back in the morning when curfew was over.
Mm-hmm.
Try to return to the shambles of their lives, Well, Andy and I looked at each other. And oddly enough, Andy and I never spoke in the field. One look was all it took. That's all the communication we ever needed.
Uh-huh.
I knew exactly what he was thinking. He knew exactly, and we were always on the same level. If something pissed one of us off, it pissed the other guy off. So Andy and I are looking like, we got to do something about this. So we thought about that for the rest of the afternoon. Come evening time, we had both figured out a plan. So we got the squad into a big ditch.
Mm-hmm.
We concealed them with banana leaves, so they're camouflaged in the dark. They can see the road in front of them, but nobody can see them.
Yeah, it's perfect concealment.
And we told the squad leader we'll be back before dawn, you know. And we told him what direction we'd come back.
Right.
Like
you don't want to get shot, so
yeah,
you're letting them know.
We're not coming in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody coming in that way, open fire. But if you open fire this way, we're going to shoot back.
Right.
We'll assume you're all dead anyway. So they hunkered down. They were trained to do what they were told to do. Andy and I stripped down. We had our blouse shirts. They looked like jackets.
Yeah.
And we had our rifles concealed underneath the jackets. And we each had a thermite and a Willie Pete grenade, white phosphorus.
Yeah.
Well, no, we had a white phosphorus and a frag
Mm-hmm.
and grenade. So we go into the Ville. And again, we never even talked about this. We get to the edge of the Ville. We know they've got sentries in there. So we get down on our bellies and we did our trained crawl into the Ville, right past their sentries. And of course, this is about 3 o'clock in the morning. So we got to the center of the Ville, and usually these Villes are sent out like a wagon wheel. There's little trails going every which way from the center.
Uh-huh.
In the center, there was this big clump of weeds. We crawled into the weeds, you know, got our rifles ready. We each pulled out our 2 grenades. I pulled Andy's pins, he pulled mine. And 1, 2, 3, we each threw a white phosphorus, waited a second or two, and then we each threw a frag. So the white phosphorus would go off with a bang and a big flash, light up the whole area. And about the time all those, you know, all the offending idiots would look up, the frags would go off. Hopefully, at least nicking somebody, you know.
Yeah.
Well, then we hunkered down. And sure enough, just as we expected, one side of the Ville started shooting at the other side. The other side returned fire. So initially it was pop, 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 bang. You know, somebody with a pistol, bang, bang,
Yeah.
an officer, and light automatic fire. And that's about the point we decided to DD-mow. We would get the heck out of there.
Right. You have done your damage. It's time to leave.
Yeah, we started World War III. We're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all we cared. If, you know, in the Marine Corps, you know, if there was a reason to start trouble, you started it and you disappeared.
Makes sense.
And so we literally ran out of the Ville.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I stepped on 5 guys that were sleeping, but I didn't have time to look.
Yeah.
And we got out of the Ville, went back to our squad in the direction we told them we'd come in, announced ourselves, and we rejoined them until morning. Well, while that shooting was going on, I heard a familiar sound. Whop, 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 Hueys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only Hueys that flew around there at night were gunships. So the Army had a flight of 3 gunships up, all flying lights out, black paint. Couldn't see them from the ground, but we could hear them plainly. So I asked the radio man, I said, have you got their frequencies? He said, yeah, and I said, get them on the horn. So, I mean, this was the job of my squad leader, but I just knew what to do, so I did it.
Right. In the absence of orders, you do something.
And of course, the radio man is used to listening to just the squad leader.
Yeah.
But I'm barking orders, and I'm a team leader, so he's going to listen to me. Get him on the horn. So he raises them on the horn, gets the flight leader, and they're already circling the Ville. You know, they're spread out equal distance on a 360, 120 degrees apart. So I know what they're doing. I mean, it's standard combat tactics. And I asked I said, radio man said, ask the flight leader if he's got the Ville in sight. He says, oh yeah. He says they're circling it. They've already targeted the site. You know. I said, tell them enemy in the Ville, no friendlies. And he comes back with, but which side are the Marines on? He knows it's Marine territory.
Yeah.
And he says to me, they want to know which side the Marines are on. I said, tell them there are no Marines in there. It's all enemy. Well, the Army couldn't believe it. I mean, he sees the Ville, everybody's shooting at each other. Where are the Marines? He doesn't want to gun down any Marines.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I told the radio operator, I said, ask him what color tracers he sees. And the pilot comes back, green. And then you hear him say, oh, because Marines don't have green tracers, we got red. So they unloaded everything they had on the Ville. From miniguns to rockets. I swear as they flew away, one guy was firing a 45 out a window, you know.
They were just going to expend all the ammo they had.
Every piece of ammo they had. Anything they could throw, whatever. So they fly off. So in the morning, our night ambush, as it was, is over. We get up and we're going back to the base. And as we approach the base for the first time in history, a bunch of NCOs come out and ask us, did we see anything? And I'm point man, you know, and I said, oh, not a damn thing. You know, like it was a quiet night.
Yeah.
He says, wow, he says, the Army sent a recon helicopter out this morning to that Ville that they attacked last night. They got 1,000 KIA. And I said, wow, those guys are really badass. You know, and we went in, sacked out.
Yeah.
Cleaned our gear first, then we sacked out. Then we get something to eat if we're lucky. So in the middle of the afternoon, I wake up. I thought, I got to find Andy. And he used to hang out with a mortar team on the other end of the base. The forward observer was a buddy from his hometown. So he was assigned to our company. So I knew Andy would be down there. So I'm running across the base. And sure enough, Andy's coming the other way. We meet in the middle. And we're both yelling, we got to go back tonight. He says, let's find Joe Satina, the squad leader.
Yeah.
Joe was the coolest squad leader I ever dealt with. And all these guys had been in Vietnam much longer than I had, so they were all short timers.
Yeah.
So we found Joe. We told him, we said, well, we had a good night last night. We want to go back tonight. It's important we go back tonight. So we convinced Joe, and he says, I'll take care of it. So we went and got our gear ready. Got some more white phosphorus grenades, some more frags. And sure enough, that night we go out again, same thing. Found a new spot, hid the platoon, or hit the squad. Went back to the Ville. And this time I didn't want to crawl in. I was tired of that crawling shit. So I had my hat on crooked, like the Vietnamese used to do. And we walked into the Ville hand in hand like two Vietnamese soldiers. That was a common thing if they were, good buddies.
Yeah.
They walked hand in hand.
Yeah.
Americans never walked hands.
Right.
Americans wouldn't let anybody touch them,
Especially Marines.
Yeah.
Especially Marines, yeah.
You try to walk my hand, I'll knock you out.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we go in there and I'm walking hunched over like I'm drunk, And Andy's chattering away in Vietnamese. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. And we literally walked past all their security. And we thought they had a company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had a few more guys than that. I mean, because the night before the Army killed 1,000 of them.
Yeah, that's a lot.
There had to be about 3 times that many in the Ville. And 3,000 men is more like a battalion than a company. So I think what they did is they reinforced it. So we walk in there were cooking fires everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Radios playing, the honky-tonk music they listened to. I mean, they figured the war the night before was the last big battle they'd see for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So Andy and I resumed our spots, pulled our grenade pins, threw our grenades, and got down. Sure enough, World War III all over again. Andy and I are grinning like Cheshire cats, you know. Well, we really pissed them off this time, because now they're full automatic weapons back and forth.
Yeah, 3 times the amount of people, too.
So we run out of the Ville. Somehow we got out of there without getting hit. And of course, everybody's looking towards where the firing is going on. They're not looking around.
Right.
So we ran right through their lines, found our guys, rejoined them. And of course, on the way back, we could hear the whop, whop, whop of the gunships. And the radio man's looking at me expectantly. He said, give him a call. Give him a call. And the call was, you the same guys from last night? Yes, we are. You the same Marines? You're clear to fire. Thank you much. Out. And they went to work on the Ville again. This time they brought extra ammo. So they fly off. So the next morning we're going in, same NCOs run out. See anything? Not a damn thing. Wow, the Army did a recon flight this morning. They claimed another 500 NVA killed. I said, wow, those guys are badass. You know.
Yeah.
Went to take our nap. And that'll never make the history books. I mean, nobody ever knew about it. Nobody could confirm it.
Right, but you were there.
I was there in the Army. I knew the Army guys were happy with their work.
Right, yeah.
They had photographic evidence.
Yes.
And I was happy we got 1,500 communists in 2 nights.
Yeah.
And anytime you got a body count, you're doing really good in Vietnam.
Right, that was a big deal over there.
A big deal.
Yep. So how long were you at Liberty Bridge then for this stint? Was that the last place you went, or did you go someplace else after Liberty Bridge?
Well, we got deployed to other operations.
Uh-huh.
The next operation in September was Operation Dodge City.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, the issued maps literally said Dodge City on it. And that was an NVA haven.
Uh-huh.
They didn't approach that lightly. They knew it was a stronghold. They didn't want to waste lives. Unless they had supporting fire of some kind, they never went in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? We got a new battalion commander. God knows where he came from, but he's out to make a name for himself. He hasn't got much time left to get qualified for general, or he'll run on enlistment time.
Right. So he needs a win. He needs a big win.
He needs a big win. So he marched the whole battalion to Dodge. It was several miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Marched us all the way to Dodge City. And we got no supporting fire. We got no air power, no gunships, and the Marine Corps didn't have gunships.
Right.
We had Phantoms and Crusaders, but no gunships. And Corsairs flew at night. And so here we are faced with the biggest bill I'd ever seen. and we're supposed to assault this Ville. So we moved up to position probably about a click or less from the Ville.
Mm-hmm.
Sat up for the night. That night, I had a section of the line. So I had an M60 position to my left. I was in the middle with one man. I had two men on my right. So we were short-handed.
Mm-hmm.
We were spread pretty thin. And the M60 team I had was moderately effective as a team, worthless as individuals. One of the members was the local moonshiner to the outfit. I mean, I don't know if they carry it in their canteens or what, but you try to get them to do anything, and it was like herding cats.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So I got them over there, and their corporal was a guy named Frenchy Caraval, and so Corporal Caraval had that position. And they're only supposed to open fire on my orders. So in the middle of the night, we hear noises to the front of our positions, and the Marines and I.
Uh-huh.
And I've got a claymore out there. So I call into the command unit, the captain, and request permission to fire the claymore. He gives me permission. My buddy is all excited about squeezing the hell box that fires the claymore. He wants to try it.
This sounds exciting.
He asked me, can I do it? And I said, sure, you can do it. I don't care. I just want somebody to set off the claymore.
Yeah.
So I set up a deal where with both the two end positions, like I'm going to yell fire in the hole, count to 3, and fire the claymore. After the claymore goes off, only after it goes off, I want you to throw a frag this way, and it goes to the other team. I tell them to throw a frag that way.
Mm-hmm.
So anything getting out of the blast area will be caught. Good plan. Fell apart the minute the claymore went off.
No plan survives the first shot fired.
The guy on the right swears he never heard anybody yell fire in a hole.
Uh-huh.
He gets blown right back into the hole from the concussion. We've got a brand new man that got delivered to me that night. Never been anywhere, much less Vietnam. He's a private,
Uh-huh.
PFC,
Yep.
like we all were when we got there. He hasn't had any training with us, no weapons familiarization, anything. And I didn't have time to babysit.
Yeah.
So I put him with Frenchie's gun team under the orders that he doesn't shoot anything, he doesn't throw anything.
Right.
I said, tomorrow I'll work with him and he can do all the shooting and throwing he wants. But tonight, he does not do anything. That's it. Like, no mistake. Guess who they give the grenade to?
The FNG.
So the FNG throws the grenade like a baseball, which means you go straight up in the air.
Right.
Blast goes off, I get hit in the back. Not bad, but I know I got hit.
Yeah.
And so once I'm sure everything's quiet on the lines, I call the captain again, tell him we got one man, slightly injured. Want to go send him to the corpsman. He agrees to that. And I kind of hinted at that it was me.
Yeah.
So I leave my radio and everything behind. I grab my rifle and I go find the CP group for the corpsman. So I've got Ronald Yates. We all called him Rowdy. They did that before I got there. I don't know why they did that. But Rowdy was about 6'5", and he was gangly, and he was one of those people that no matter what kind of uniform you put on him, it didn't work. It looked wrong. There was always something hanging or drooping, or, you know, it just was a nightmare. Anyway, I wake Rowdy up, and he was a very good corpsman. He was my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
He knew his stuff. And, what is it? And I said, we got one man hit. Oh my God. He grabs his B4 bag and everything, and he runs off into the dark. So I'm sitting there waiting. I know he's going to come back.
Right.
He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know what he's doing. Well, after a moment, a long moment, he comes back out of the dark. He says, where is he? I said, right here. He throws all his stuff down, like, why didn't you tell me, So he turns me over and pulls my shirt up, and sure enough, there's a piece of frag, American frag, sticking out of my back between the shoulder blades. So he grabs a tweezer and some alcohol. He takes the piece out. Asked me if I want it. I said, throw it away.
Yeah.
I don't want it. I didn't want it in the first place.
Right.
And he patches me up with a Band-Aid. He says, you're good to go. And I said, that's all I need. Thank you. And I go back to my position. So I'm the only casualty of the whole action, right? The next morning, the battalion commander has ordered the battalion to move forward on Dodge City.
Mm-hmm.
And our group is the last group to move out, which means I'm tailing Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
So the NVA opens up on me. Now they gave us these new soft-covered Australian-type hats. We were so proud of these hats. We couldn't believe they gave us something that would actually shade us in the hot sun,
Yeah.
And they looked kind of cool. You could snap one side up or the other, kind of look Aussie.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those...
And they were camouflage.
Uh-huh.
First piece of camouflage equipment we had, because we wore olive green all the time.
Right.
We didn't have fancy uniforms. So of course the NVA opens up and they shoot my new hat off my head. And through the whole engagement, they kept shooting at my hat. It was disintegrating in front of me. And that pissed me off. I was returning fire. I'm in the prone position.
Uh-huh.
Firing, automatic bursts at them. They're shooting with machine guns. I'm firing at automatic bursts. And 2 guys each grabbed an ankle, and they're towing me out of there. I'm like a tail gunner. Only I'm on the ground in the sand.
Being dragged.
Thank you for listening to part 3 of our 5-part series with Don Roach, who served in the United States Marine Corps. For watching the story of one of our nation's heroes on Veterans Archives, where your story matters. We are dedicated to preserving these stories for future generations.